Hey everyone, welcome to the Healthy Teams podcast. I'm your host, Mark Erickson, and this is the show where we dive into the real stories behind thriving workplace cultures, exploring everything from wellness and morale to leadership and productivity. Today's guest is Patty Beach, co-founder of LeadershipSmarts. And Patty is a master certified coach and a nationally recognized thought leader in inclusive leadership. And she's worked with companies like Trimble, Cisco, and Boeing, helping leaders tap into the power of alignment to drive some serious bottom line results. Patty has over 2 decades of experience, and I think you're really going to enjoy this because Patty has a practical yet deeply human approach to developing conscious, capable leaders. So get ready for some powerful insights that you can take back to your team today. And Patty, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Love that intro. It's great.
Oh, thank you. Well, Patty, let's kick things off by maybe telling us a little bit about yourself and the kind of work that you and your team do at LeadershipSmarts.
Right. I am a leadership development consultant, and also I am developing methodology to use technology to help leaders. So I also have a leadership technology company. And I do executive coaching. I help leaders and teams come together, take their insights, turn them into action, make group decisions. Basically anything that requires a group to come together and move forward together, that's my specialty.
Well, beautiful. What a great fit for the Healthy Teams podcast. So happy to have you here today. Patty, you've worked with some huge organizations like Boeing and Cisco. What's a common leadership blind spot that you help leaders uncover that really works across industries?
Well, I think that it's kind of a blind spot, but it's just more of like expressing a way of leadership and not actually living into their belief system. So most of us realize that leadership is not a solo sport, that you need to engage and involve other people. But the reality is everybody's under a lot of time pressure. And so while I'd like to loop everybody in and get buy-in and get a sense of their collective intelligence, it's not often a skill I have, or it's what I would call an unfunded mandate. It's like someone's asked this of me. I need to do it, but I don't have enough time, money, or energy to do it. So what we try to do is help the practice of inclusive leadership to be a practical reality. How do you make it efficient? How do you make it still human, not take away that human aspect, but really tap into the collective intelligence? Because we believe that what people co-create, they commit to, versus like they've been handed something down, they've been sent something by email or told to do something. We hear people talk about being voluntold. That happens all the time, voluntold, which means that you're volunteering, but someone really told you to do it. And ultimately, you just don't get the best outcome from that. You need people to be really involved. You need to engage them. You need to tap into their own thinking such that they really believe in the solutions they're creating. And that's when you don't have to have all of that like accountability talk, like I'm going to hold you accountable. That's when people hold themselves accountable because they care about the outcome. They were part of creating the outcome and they're committed to it. So it's not exactly a blind spot. Like I said, most people believe in it. It's something you hear people talk about a lot, but they just don't do it all the time. And partially don't know that they have the skill to do it. That's why in our practice, we really try to just codify it, make it super simple, and help people understand the basics. What does it take to co-create with other people? Co-create solutions are really sound, and to take things off the table. Sometimes that's the hardest part of leadership, is to say no to something you don't have the time or energy to do, and you just keep doing it anyway, those kind of things. Those things take leadership fortitude. How do you create alignment, get agreement, get people involved, and really create that truth-telling environment where it's both safe to say what you need to say, but it's also brave. You're not being so polite that people are saying yes when you don't mean yes. So there's all those nuances of how do you get this co-creativity really going in an organization.
Awesome. Patty, you talk about Shuva in your TED Talk, which I watched, by the way, and wonderful talk. Thank you so much for that. I really enjoyed and learned a lot from it personally. Could you break that down for us and maybe give a real world example of how that could be applied in in a team setting?
Yeah. So Shuva is an acronym I created, and it stands for 5 universal needs that we all have. The need to be seen, heard, understood, valued, and appreciated. It's pretty super basic. Like, I want to be seen. I want to be the person invited to the meetings. I don't want to be skipped from that. I want to be heard. I want to have a chance to say what I need to say. I want to be understood in that sometimes there's a feeling behind my words, or there's something under there that's a little more deeper. And then I want to be valued. I want my ideas to be considered, such that, we take a second and go, well, maybe that is the way we should do it. Doesn't mean we always agree. Sometimes we decide not to, but we at least take it seriously. That's valued. And then appreciated. After I've said my piece and been a part of it, I want to be appreciated, whether you like what I had to say or not. And so, really, that's what everybody wants. I want to go to a workplace and I want to get Shuva. But it's also 5 things that we can do. I can see, hear, understand, value, and appreciate you. It's 5 actions. So I created this acronym because a lot of times I work with engineers, and I say it's like bringing love through the logic door. The workplace, we talk about love, it's a little awkward. Maybe it's not the kind of love you really should be having at work, those kind of things, So Shuva's kind of the real form of attention we want at work. We want Shuva. Like I might say I love my boss, but again, what I'm really saying is that I feel Shuva from my boss, and I give Shuva back. So we see on a team, when a boss can Shuva their employees and the employees can Shuva their boss and each other, that's where co-creativity takes off. It's because we can't really create something or come to real alignment that's not a forced alignment or a fake alignment unless we have Shuva. When we have Shuva reciprocated, just about anything can happen. You don't have Shuva, you kind of, you can have sort of like what I call the sh principle, like I see and I hear you, but I don't know. That's basically like halfway down that formula, right? You got to go a little deeper to get to understanding, so that whatever ideas emerge, we can really deliberate them in a healthy way. And I can tell you that I've had people who they had somebody suddenly like resign on them, and they were just like, "Why is this person resigning?" And I said, "Well, did you ever talk to them about anything? You have any sense of it?" That's an example of where there was no Shuva happening. The person really had no idea that this person was unhappy at work. I actually had a person one time that I was coaching that he had a really high performer that he wanted to promote. And so he offered her a promotion and she didn't want to take it. And he called his HR person. He said, "I don't know what's going on. Why won't you take this promotion?" And she said, "Well, you know, um, people don't get to decide what positions they have. And if she has to move for that promotion, then, that's the way it is." And so he called me and he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, I think you should talk to her and you should find out what's going on with her, that she didn't accept that promotion. Like, what's happening?" And it turned out that she was working in another location, and she'd been working for this guy there for like 32 years. And he was just about to retire. And she wanted to see out that retirement before she left that position. So once he figured that out, I was like, "Sure, I can wait till next year or next, whatever the time frame was." And she gladly moved over. So that's just an example of where, you could lose a really good talent or totally misconstrue something because you didn't sit down and have the conversation to really know what's going on.
That's fantastic. Patty, so many companies today have remote workers, and it seems like Shuva might be a little more complicated in a remote setting where, I mean, this is wonderful. You and I can see each other, we can look each other in the eye and kind of maybe pick up on some of the nonverbal communications that are going on. But a lot of communication now is taking place, over the phone, over Slack, etc.
Hmm.
Um, do you have any
Yeah.
suggestions for, integrating Shuva into kind of the modern workforce?
Well, I do. So first of all, one thing I can say is that I really do believe that if you're going to have a Zoom meeting, you should turn your camera on. Like, it's kind of crazy how many people don't do that, but they just have the meeting with this little dark panel with like your name across it, you know. And we get camera fatigue, you know, that's one of the things that happens. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when you're on Zoom, you can actually turn off seeing yourself. So, like, if I'm talking to you and communicating with you, it can be distracting if I'm watching myself. You know, it's like watching two people at once, and one of them's me, and then I'm self-conscious about it, right? And so that can inhibit Shuva. If I can see you just like you're on the screen and I'm talking to you and don't have all these distractions, it can make a really big difference. So I actually believe that a virtual environment like Zoom can be almost as good as in person if you really learn how to use good hygiene, you know, like turn off your notifications and put that camera, turn off your picture, turn off people who don't have their pictures, because that can be, sometimes they don't have their pictures, you need to know they're there, but sometimes you have distracting things. So that's an example of things you can do to Shuva more deeply in a setting. Also, sometimes you can, in a virtual setting, you can put on, what do you call it, the captions. For some people, it helps to actually see the words. Some of us are very visual and some of us are more auditory. So closed caption can be another way to really get more of what people are saying in a conversation. But as far as like non-synchronous communication that we're doing with things like Slack and Teams and all of those things, I believe that it's important to have a process for making discussion. So what we see with Slack channels and emails is that this discussion kind of comes randomly and you lose the thread, what's actually being said. So that's why we're developing software for alignment. Basically, what that software will do is a leader can put a proposal that they want people to align around. And again, it's a soft proposal. Like, I put my idea out there, float it out there and see what you think. This is like the getting buy-in idea. And then there's a process whereby the discussion can happen that brings in people's clarifications so that they understand it. Their concerns or their compliments, what they like about it, concerns they may have, suggested changes in their level of commitment. And this happens through the software in this particular way so that when things come in, they make sense. So you can actually have multiple people. Like, one person might say they like it, one person might say they don't like it, but you can see all of that in a really logical way that helps the people that are listening through that asynchronous discussion about that idea to be able to put their input in there and for it to be pulled together to make a cohesive reproposal based on the deliberation that happens in that channel, and then ultimately come to a decision where we could say, well, we've reached the level of commitment that we need to have this as a decision going forward. So that's what our software will do. And it has an AI component in it so that when people put their ideas into this platform, the AI component can help generate the reproposal based on hearing everything all together. And then that can be thrown back out to the group. So basically, it's very normal for a discussion to start with someplace and kind of move all over the place, meander, right? And this kind of creates more of like a clear, instead of meandering off the stream, you're staying on that same main stream until the decision gets made. And it kind of helps clear up some of those issues we have with things like Slack, Teams, text threads. Sometimes people trying to make decisions using text threads, like, I mean, it was kind of like, shocking to hear that like battle plans are being discussed through text threads. Like, it's amazing, what people make decisions using these virtual methods. And sometimes that's what you have to do. You're a busy person. My co-founder for my business is off in India this week. How am I going to communicate with him during the day? So these are all just methods you can use to work in the reality and still stay a cohesive team and not get out ahead of your headlights, like making decisions that for your team member that they really should have been a part of. Anyway, I'm going through this right now. For example, we're putting together a contract for a person we're bringing into our company, and all the founders need to weigh in on that contract because it'll be something we've all agreed to, and be like, well, I missed the email, I missed the da-da-da, and all that. So that's how we stay really clean with our decisions, and we are clear. Yeah, we're all in, or we're not all in, and we need to keep talking about it. Which happens. But yeah, that's what it's all about, and that creates the cohesive, clear team that has healthy deliberations, and they're not game playing and using technology too much or as an excuse or poorly. That creates more noise. Really, technology can create a lot of noise. I see you nodding your head, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it really can, and I agree that so often we get in these text thread silos, and that's all great until it gets lost in the sea of other texts, and then there goes those great ideas.
yeah,
So I think you're onto something with this new technology platform that you're
yeah.
and and is that something that is available today, or is that something
We're in
that's
the
in
process of
development?
beta testing it with clients right now. If anybody be interested in being part of that beta test, we are very, very excited about the idea. This could help boards. This could help leadership teams. This could help, people, anybody who's making decisions that they feel like they need to loop in a lot of people. And part of the reason why we're bringing software into it is because we want it to be scalable and trackable, and more, people are using technology anyway, so it's just kind of leaning into what people are doing. I like to think of it as like, instead of artificial intelligence, AI, we call it in our practice AHI, augmented human intelligence. How do we keep leaders that are making a decision in that same decision making loop? Usually you have one person's falling out because they're out of town or they're on vacation. We keep them in the loop. And then we add the AI component to take all this great intelligence that people have had from having this deliberation and kick out, something we can use to then finalize our decision. Because a lot of times we talk about stuff and then you're never really sure what got decided. You get done with it, you walk out of the meeting, you're like, what did we decide again? Or and it would be right there where you could see what was decided, who decided it, what misgivings they might have had got brought up, because sometimes you find out the person had misgivings were actually right. When you love to have a record for every time you were right and that went the wrong way, you're like, well, maybe I don't want a record of that, but if you want to be a learning organization and you're like, yeah, we make mistakes, we live and learn, that's how we get better. So we're super excited about it. I feel like it remedies a lot of these challenges, that over reliance on poorly organized technology, or you can use this methodology with people in a room. Like I can use the quick align software and throw it up on a screen and have the deliberation and type it all in there, so you don't necessarily have to use it asynchronously. It could support, like if you're using whiteboarding or something, it's that kind of a thing that could be very helpful for a team to kind of see where are they getting closer to alignment, or are they really misaligned? How do you make that transparent? Because sometimes, it's easy to come to agreement, and sometimes it's pretty hard. Sometimes people are very polarized. We see that in Congress right now, super polarization, right? It's really hard for them to make a decision. And it's hard when you have half the people agree and half the people disagree, and we want to say, well, it's your fault. Well, if we had a better process where we're really listening to each other and we're listening through all of these different filters of, do we understand it? What do we like about it? What concerns do we have? What changes do we suggest? How committed am I? Then pretty soon you would be amazed at how we can break through very contentious team dynamics in a short period of time. I've worked with teams that they said for 10 years they did not agree. Literally, like they had the headquarters up here and the site over here, or sales and operations constantly fighting with each other. And they use this process, and within a day, they make really huge decisions that they've been stymied by for ages. It's pretty exciting.
Wow, that really is. That's fantastic. And I hope Congress does use it as decide that they could sure
Yeah,
use some help.
I had
Um,
a CTO from the Air Force had said that she thought it could de-escalate conflict even. I'm like, wow, I don't know. We'll see. If somebody could help them find it, that'd be great. They can, get my book and take a look at it, see what they think, whoever they
there
are.
you go.
Yeah.
So, Patty, what role does inclusion play in team alignment, and how can leaders move from surface level inclusion to real authentic engagement?
Yeah. So the word inclusion right now can be sort of a hot button for some people, but the way I use it in my book is that whenever we're going to move forward, we're moving forward together. I'm going to include you in understanding what we're doing, why we're doing it. I'm going to include you in thinking through our next step. And that could be from any direction. Like I might be a senior leader, including someone below me, or I might be a peer, like we're peers on the board and I'm including other board members. Or I might be someone who's trying to drive a decision up the chain of command to like my managers, and I can include, them in by saying, hey, here's what I think my job should be. What do you think? I mean, like include them in decisions. A lot of times, people at lower levels feel disempowered. And this would be give them an opportunity to truly be inclusive, not just from things that are being told to do, but things that they think should happen. So we look at the inclusion in all of those different directions. And then we also think of inclusion in terms of different people from different disciplines. Like I used to be a geologist and I'd get in a room full of engineers and it's like we're speaking two different languages. We all have different acronyms and, even the geologists and geophysicists will look at each other like we're crazy, and so my anymore you really can't afford to just be in your silo. Everything's very, interconnected. Like if you're going to do IT, you have to think of, data privacy and security systems, and you need your UI to be a beautiful experience. It takes all of these different kinds of disciplines, and they have to really be able to shuva one another to come up with the best solutions. So that's what we think of as inclusion. We also think of inclusion as people who are marginalized, people who are in the minority. When you're in the minority, it's hard to be included because you don't really know if it's safe to say things. So as an example, I was a woman working as a geologist in energy companies back in the 90s. And anytime I was in a room, it was usually one woman in the room. There might be 12 guys. And one of the things that I found was that if there were 2 or 3 women in the room, I was more likely to say what I thought than if there weren't. So at first I thought, well, I'll just kind of don't say anything because I'm a woman. But what I found out was sometimes people don't say something because they're the youngest person in the room, or they're the only geologist, or they're the only, they're new to the company. So with inclusion, we want to bring every voice into the room. I always like to say every voice matters. And together we really can achieve anything. We think, well, how do we synergize all those voices? It's really not that hard. If you shiva each other, and if it's hard, if you have a process or software we're going to use to enhance that, to make it easier, then it's doable. But it really starts with, attunement to the fact that we're all just so interdependent. We need each other. And the more I listen to the other people, the parts of the system I have to work with, the better off I'm going to be. Like building my software, I need to be listening to people who are using the software. How would they use it? What do they think? It's not just me, So, yeah, I don't know, something like that. Does that answer your question? I like wandered a little
Yeah,
bit there, but
that
yeah.
did. Thank you, Patty.
Uh-huh.
Um, how do you coach teams through when they're in a period where maybe they have some conflict or misalignment? How do you help them push through that and turn that into a growth opportunity?
Yeah. So, first of all, I do think it helps to reframe conflict as a misalignment. It just feels better. I don't know. We talk about conflict, and it's the conflict and confrontation, and some people have a real allergy to those kind of words or that feeling, disharmony. But if we think about misalignment, it's like, let's just, it's not lined up. We need to get things lined up. So that I think is a first step, is to think of it that way. And I have a little process I teach my clients. I call it the wine to wow. So the wine is finding that point of pain. What is it that I'm not satisfied? Usually if there's a dissatisfaction, it's because there's a misalignment. And I think through, okay, that's what I don't like. What is it I do want? That's the first W in wow. So I got a dissatisfaction. That's my wine. That's what I don't want. And normally we talk like, I don't know, why don't we do this? It just sounds bad, right? But if we get off of the line and we just skip that part, maybe I write it all down or I talk to my coach in my little private quarters, then I go to the wow part of the formula, which is what do I want? What options do we have to reach that? And what will we do? That's WOW. Want, options, will. So if I can say, hey, what I really want is for us to meet on a regular basis so we can make these decisions and not be waylaid all the time, right? What options do we have? Well, we can meet by, Zoom, we can do half hours, we can meet every Thursday, we could meet every other week, right? Those are options. And then what will we do after we've discussed those options? What is it that we come to? So I think that little tool really helps a lot because it kind of goes back to the idea of like putting proposals on the table. What is it I propose we do to create that alignment? And when you do that on a regular basis, then you create relationships more conducive to alignment, which is another key factor that we look at in our coaching. To what degree do the relationships that you build, are they conducive to alignment? And it starts with you. Are you in the wine or are you in the well? If you're in the wine, it's not going to be as conducive to alignment. It's like putting sandpaper in instead of the grease we need to make things happen.
Patty, you've spent over 20 years in this space now. Could you share with us how your own leadership philosophy has evolved over time?
Yeah, I think that when I started my leadership philosophy, I believed in facilitative leadership, where I ask a lot of people their ideas. And I think that partially was just my own insecurity, and I studied organizational development, and I was just trying to gather and help other people make decisions. But what I've come to realize is that, I got a lot of really good ideas, and I want a way to put them on the table and get them considered. That's something important to me. And I had interviewed somebody, and he told me, I was kind of thinking, okay, is this guy going to be a good player with us? And he said, I want you to know that there's a lot I don't know. And I'm always interested in finding out what other people know. And that's important in my leadership. But I also know a lot of stuff. And I want to be able to tap into that. And so I feel like I'm kind of in this place now where I'm moving toward that hybrid. How do we have that servant leadership where we're pulling from other people, but we're also still putting our ideas on the table? And I'm moving more towards feeling more confident. Just here's my idea, and taking some lead in that, while still leaning into the belief that I have to bring other people into that equation to challenge my ideas, to help me solidify them, and to really move them forward.
Awesome. Patty, was there a moment in your career that really shaped how you approach your leadership today? Just any type of pivotal moment? Did you get that aha moment when you came up with Shuva as an example?
It's kind of funny with the Shuva thing. It just actually just like dropped into my head all at once. It was really kind of an
Wow.
interesting experience to have that happen. But, I do think that that's something that happens for me on the regular, where I actually, do a little either meditation, or I'll get in the shower, or I'll be sleeping in the middle of the night, and I'll have ideas come down, to me. And Shuva would be an example of that. And I'm just starting to trust that more. I feel like there's something, that we're all trying to move forward together. And I just feel like I'm just trying to be a conduit for the good spirit of good things to happen. I try to get out of so I used to doubt myself. Like I'd hear these things and I think, oh, well, that's crazy. Everybody must know that. And then I've come to find that oftentimes things like Shuva, which I get a lot of feedback around all the time, can be really powerful for people. So I'm just going to get out of the way of that and just let it come through.
Oh, that's beautiful. One last question. With AI and remote work shifting team dynamics, What do you think is the next generation of lead? What do you think the next generation of leadership needs to prioritize in order to stay effective and human-centered?
Yeah, I think we need to prioritize safe to fail experiments, that we need to be open to trying new things. We need to be transparent about the fact that we're learning, and we need to just talk about it. Like, as AI comes on the scene, sometimes I think people are almost embarrassed to say they're using AI, when it's a really powerful tool. It's extremely powerful. And it's also, can kind of go the wrong way with us, right? If we're not really aware of it. So I think we need to have our eyes open. I also think we need that technology is going to be a part of it. The leaders that use technology to enhance their thinking and their ideas and move them out in the world are the ones that are going to succeed. I think that, it's kind of rare to just find that instinctual leader who doesn't have to, can just move things out without really being tech savvy. It doesn't mean they're not valuable. It doesn't mean they're still not a thing. They are definitely a thing. It's just, if you're really going to be good in business, it's going to be key. So just getting comfortable with the fact that we're all moving through something new. This AI stuff is kind of so fast. They say that there's going to be more change by 2030 than the whole industrial revolution. Like every job's going to change, every job description, every process, and we really just need to get ready for getting comfortable with the fact that we don't know what we're doing and we got to run little experiments. That's kind of what I think, and run them together. So we're transparent about it, and it's okay to have messed up once in a while. You're gonna figure that out as you go, right?
Yeah, I love that notion of safe to fail, that we're going to be conducting experiments together. Some are going to work beautifully, some may not, but got to try new things in order to learn.
Yeah, that's what you need in an ambiguous environment like we're in right now, where everything's changing. The currency, so many things. I've just never seen. It's unprecedented, and especially right now with the administration change. There's a lot of changes happening because of political change, and that you could be a part of the government. Of course, that's hitting you really big as a government, but all the businesses that are facing changes in the economic landscape, and they're going to have to be really nimble and keep that safe and brave space to talk about how do we adjust and adapt to all of these differences that are coming our way.
Right, right. Was that old Chinese proverb, the only thing constant is change, and that seems to be more true than ever now.
Absolutely, it's definitely true.
Well, Patty, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you for joining us and sharing your insights in building healthy teams. And Patty, before we wrap up, could you let our listeners know where they can find you and learn more about Leadership Smarts?
So they can go to our website, LeadershipSmarts.com. I also recommend that they go out to Amazon and they pick up my book. It's called The Art of Alignment, A Practical Guide to Inclusive Leadership. And right then and there, you have a lot of what I've been sharing today. We do have monthly free meetings for people that are interested in alignment, curious people want to come check it out. So if they go to our website, they'll see places where they can sign up for our newsletter or some of those community meetings, or maybe sign up for one of our trainings.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Patty. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Healthy Teams podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like and subscribe and share it with your teammates or anybody who's passionate about improving workplace culture. We'll be back soon with more great conversations to help you build stronger, healthier teams. Until next time, stay well and lead well. Thank you.
Thanks.